Have you ever wondered what it actually means to hear voices? Not metaphorically, not like your inner critic, but literally. Auditory hallucinations. Hearing things no one else hears, like why it happens, what it sounds like, and what it feels like to live with it. Because for some people, it's not just a diagnosis, it's daily life. And most of us have never been told the truth about it. It didn't feel like a break from reality. It felt like reality got louder, more vivid, more chaotic, disorganized. Like my brain was trying to tell me something in a language I didn't speak yet. And I wasn't crazy. I was overwhelmed, alone, afraid of what would happen if I told someone what I was seeing, what I was hearing, what I was believing. Because what if they looked at me differently? What if they didn't see me anymore? Just the symptom. This episode is about hallucinations and delusions and all the things people don't talk about unless they're mocking them or medicating them or fearing them. But I want to talk about them differently. Like a clinician, yes, but also like someone who's listened to the stories, to the terror, to the relief that comes when someone finally hears you say, "You're not broken. You're not alone. And you're not the only one who's ever felt this way." So let's talk about it. So, what are hallucinations? A hallucination is when your brain perceives something that isn't actually there. No external sound, no visible image, no physical sensation. But your brain and your body still register it as real. It's not imagination. It's not exaggeration. It's a full body experience. The most common are auditory hallucinations. Hearing things like voices, whispers, or sounds with no external source. But hallucinations aren't just auditory. They can also be visual, like seeing shadows, lights, or figures. Shadows out of the corner of your eye or in your peripheral vision. Tactile, which is feeling bugs crawling on your skin, or the sensation of you being touched, or pressure being applied to you. There's also olfactory, which is smelling things like smoke or decay or perfume. And then there's gustatory, which is experiencing taste when nothing is in the mouth. These commonly show up in disorders like schizophrenia spectrum disorders, bipolar 1, especially during mania, PTSD and trauma disorders, grief, especially complicated, or post-bereavement, substance use or withdrawal, dementia, Parkinson's, epilepsy, even sleep deprivation. Oh, something I wanted to make sure that I brought up in this episode was just basically a cultural subsegment. Not all voices mean psychosis. Not all hallucinations mean psychosis. And not all cultures interpret them that way. In Latin American cultures, for example, susto is a soul loss condition brought on by trauma, often involving dream states or visions. In Zimbabwe, in Shona culture, kufungisisa, or thinking too much, is a somatic condition tied to emotional and cognitive overload. So, kind of like overstimulation reminds me of that. In Japan, hikikomori is not a psychotic disorder. It's a cultural syndrome of extreme social withdrawal. In many indigenous traditions, visions and voices are part of spiritual roles, a calling, not a condition. And in places like India or Pakistan, dot syndrome centers around body-based beliefs and somatic distress that may look delusional, but are deeply cultural. And that's why cultural humility matters so much. It's not just, are you hallucinating? It's also, what does this mean to you? Okay, so if hallucinations are about what we perceive, delusions are about what we believe, even if that belief doesn't align with reality. A delusion is a fixed, false belief that doesn't shift even when someone shows you evidence to the contrary. It's not about being irrational at all. It's about the brain holding on to a narrative that feels more emotionally true than the facts. Common types of delusions include persecutory, grandiose, somatic, religious, and erotomanic. So we're going to dive deeper and discuss some of the different types and then examples of those kinds of delusions and what someone might sound like when they are having delusional thoughts. So first, with persecutory, think they're watching me. It's paranoid, mistrust / paranoia. And they might say things like, I know it sounds crazy, but I can tell when people are talking about me. They look at me weird. They stop laughing when I walk by. Every time I try to do something good, someone ruins it. I don't think it's random anymore. I think someone's interfering on purpose. I don't know how they're doing it, but I think my phone's being monitored. Certain things disappear from my text, and I never sent that email. I swear I didn't. And keep in mind that this can be subtle or high functioning presentation. Being watched / monitored. It could sound like there's a camera in the smoke detector. I caught the red light blinking last night. I can't go outside without sunglasses. They scan your eyes. That's how they track you. I unplugged my Wi-Fi and turned off the GPS, but I think they still know where I am. My TV is too quiet when it's off, like it's listening. Now keep in mind, again, delusions only can exist by definition when they remain fixed despite evidence to disprove their beliefs being presented to them. So, for instance, if somebody's checking the camera and showing that, the smoke detector and showing them, hey, there's no camera in here, look, to the point of maybe even taking it apart or replacing it, and they still believe that that's the case, that's most likely delusional thinking. Some other forms of persecutory delusions, like mind control or influence, it might sound like, I can feel it when they send the signals. It's like a pressure in my head. They're trying to change my thoughts. The government has technology that lets them inject thoughts into your brain. Mine aren't always mine. I know when they're not. Or it could be something like, they're experimenting on me, trying to see how long I can take it before I break. That's why I can't sleep. Or it could be more along the lines of being sabotaged or framed. And that could sound like, my coworkers are messing with my computer. Files go missing, settings change. They're trying to make me look incompetent. I got fired because someone set me up. I think they planted something in my locker. I never put it there. Or maybe they're trying to make it look like I'm mentally unstable so they can take my kids away. Now, delusions could also involve specific people. Like, my neighbor has it out for me. I see her writing in a notebook every time I leave the house. I know she's reporting me. Or, my ex is still controlling everything. He has people watching me. Every time I leave my house, there's a car I don't recognize. Now, on to grandiose delusions. So, grandiose delusions might sound like, I don't just believe I'm special. I know it. I was chosen to lead people into a new way of thinking. That sounds like me. Or, I have powers other people don't. I can shift energy influence people's thoughts, I just have to concentrate hard enough. Or I'm the real heir to a royal bloodline. They just haven't contacted me yet because it would be too dangerous. Referential delusions, which are believing neutral events, media, or conversations refer specifically to oneself. So, for example, that news anchor looked straight into the camera and said my name. It was a message, but they had to be subtle. Or billboards have been giving me hints. It's how they communicate. You have to know how to read them. Or that song on the radio? It's about me. It always comes on when I'm thinking something intense. That's how I know. And then there are somatic delusions. Somatic delusions are beliefs about bodily dysfunction or infestation. Infestation, yes, like parasites or worms in your brain, or things like that. And examples would include, there's something inside my skin. I can feel it crawling. No one believes me, but it's there. Or, my organs are rearranged. I looked at an anatomy chart and mine aren't like that. Or, I don't need to eat anymore. My body runs on a different system now. It's been changed. And then erotomanic delusions are believing someone, often famous or of just like a higher status, is in love with you. So he sends me signs all the time. You think he was looking at the camera, but he was looking at me. Or she can't say it publicly. It would ruin her career. But she's been writing songs about me for years. I know it's hard to believe, but we're spiritually married. We've never met in person because we don't need to. What's understood doesn't need to be explained. And then there are jealous delusions, such as, she's cheating on me. I don't have proof yet, but every time she smiles at her phone, I can feel it. Or, I checked his location 3 times. He says he was at work, but the timestamps don't add up. He's hiding something. Or, he changed his password. That's how I know. People only do that when they've got something to hide. Again, we need proof put in the face. To the contrary, because some of those are a little bit iffy. Okay. And then there's nihilistic delusions, often seen in psychotic depression or sometimes in Cotard syndrome. And those could sound like, I don't exist. I'm just a shadow of who I was. Or maybe I never really existed at all. The world already ended. We are just living in some kind of simulation or afterlife now. Or my organs have rotted inside me. I'm already dead. No one else seems to realize it yet. And then there are control, thought insertion, and broadcasting type of delusions. So those could sound like they're putting thoughts in my head. I can tell which ones aren't mine. They feel off. Or I stopped speaking out loud because my thoughts are being broadcast. People around me can hear what I'm thinking, and sometimes I don't want them to. Or I can't trust my own mind anymore. It's like someone else has the remote. Some delusions feel euphoric. Some feel terrifying. But they're almost always protective stories. A brain trying to make sense of pain, fear, or trauma. A lack of insight isn't stupidity. It's neurology. It's a brain that's trying to survive.
Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up.
The first time it happened, I thought it was a memory. Her voice. Sharp. Cold. Familiar. She was calling me names I hadn't heard since I was 12. Embarrassment. Disgusting. Waste of space. I sat up in bed, heart pounding. No one was there. But it didn't feel like a dream. It felt real. So real. And I didn't tell anyone. Not for 6 months. I was scared of what they'd think. Scared they'd lock me up. Scared they'd stop seeing me for who I was. But it kept happening when I was overwhelmed. If I was extra stressed out, when I felt small, the voice would come back. It wasn't random. It was targeted. It was her. The version of my mother that still lived inside me. And when I finally told someone, they didn't panic. They just asked, "Do you recognize the voice?" And that was the moment I broke. Because yeah, I recognized it. It wasn't psychosis, it was my memory replaying itself until someone helped me interrupt it. Okay, so first, you can imagine how that could be distracting for an individual. Auditory hallucinations in trauma survivors often have a pattern. The voice isn't random. It's familiar. It's often the internalized abuser or the inner critic or the unresolved grief. These voices are linked to memory systems, fear circuits, and protective responses. They are not always psychosis. They are not always illness. Sometimes they are a nervous system trying to survive the past. The goal isn't just to eliminate the voice. It's to understand what it means and to help the person feel safe again in their own mind. And obviously just breaking the stigma so that people can start to heal and not feel ashamed and embarrassed about it. And while we're all here, let's get really clear. Hallucination, perceiving something that isn't there. No external stimulus, just the brain. An example, hearing voices, seeing shadows, feeling pressure or touch. Illusions. There is a stimulus, but the brain misinterprets it. So an example of an illusion would be seeing a coat on a chair and thinking it's a person, which is common in fatigue, fear, or darkness. There's also intrusions. Intrusions are unwanted internal thought or image that feels foreign or invasive. An example would be a critical voice that feels like someone else's. And this is seen a lot in obsessive compulsive disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, people with trauma histories, and dissociation, which is another reason why we need to ask better questions. Because what someone describes as hallucinating might actually be grief or trauma or sleep deprivation or substance abuse or a combination of these things, or a lifetime of never feeling safe enough to name what's happening. Now it's time for a Mythbusters. Okay, let's call some things out. Because when it comes to hallucinations and delusions, people think they know. But what they know is often based on fear, stereotypes, and TV drama. So myth number 1, hearing voices means you have schizophrenia. No. Nope. Auditory hallucinations happen in many conditions, not just schizophrenia. You can hear voices if you're grieving, dissociating, traumatized, manic, severely sleep deprived, withdrawing from substances, or even spiritually overwhelmed. If you don't believe me, we can start with, do you know the difference between schizophrenia and schizoaffective disorder? If you don't, stay tuned. The voice doesn't always mean illness. Sometimes it means overload. Myth number 2. People who hallucinate are dangerous. This one's especially harmful because in most cases, the person hearing voices or experiencing delusions isn't a danger to others. They're scared, confused, alone, misunderstood, and more likely to be hurt by others than to hurt anyone themselves. Truly. Painting psychosis as violent fuels stigma, prevents treatment, fuels reactivity, and leads to unnecessary fear, especially toward people of color and other marginalized groups who are more likely to be misdiagnosed and overpoliced. Sorry, I know. These topics get me excited. Myth number 3. If they know it's not real, it doesn't count. False. Duality exists. Insight can be partial, fluctuating, or intact. Someone might say, I know this probably isn't real, but it still feels like it is. That doesn't mean it's not a symptom. It just means they have enough self-awareness to recognize how distressing or strange it feels. Don't mistake insight for wellness. And don't dismiss pain just because it comes with insight. Myth number 4. They're just being dramatic. Or they're faking it for attention. Not always. People usually don't fake hearing voices. They hide it. They minimize it. They carry it silently for months or years, terrified of being seen as crazy. The performance isn't the symptom. It's in how hard they work to appear normal while their perception of reality is shifting underneath of them. Myth number 5. Only meds can fix it. Medications can be life-saving. Absolutely. I'm a prescriber. But they're not the only path. Sometimes hallucinations decrease with trauma work, somatic healing, deep sleep, spiritual integration, or just safety, implementing safety. Sometimes the goal isn't to eliminate the voice. It's to understand it, lessen its power, and build a new relationship to it. Because sometimes you can't eliminate the voice. And that's something else people don't talk about. And for people with treatment-resistant symptoms, they need options. They need support. They don't need to feel hopeless. And they don't need to be blamed for not getting better. Myth number 6. This experience means the same thing in every culture. No, it doesn't. Psychiatry has often treated hallucinations and delusions like they exist in a vacuum. Like they mean the same thing in every brain, every country, every context. But that's not true. In some cultures, hearing a voice is a spiritual gift. In others, visions come during mourning or prayer and are expected. It comes down to perception and understanding. If a clinician doesn't ask about someone's cultural background, spiritual beliefs, or worldview, they might mistake an initiation for insanity. And that misdiagnosis can cause serious harm. This is why cultural humility isn't optional. It's part of ethical practice. If we only measure people's experiences through a Western clinical lens, we're not treating them. We're erasing them. And the bottom line, we have to stop reacting with fear and start responding with curiosity. That's how we break the stigma. That's how we help people stay alive. And that's how we rewrite what it means to live with hallucinations and delusions without shame.
They said I was out of control, that I was screaming, and that I couldn't be redirected, that I was in a psychotic state. But I wasn't psychotic, I was grieving. I just lost my grandmother, the only person in my life who ever made me feel safe. And in my culture, we cry loud, we scream. We call the spirit back. I was in the hospital waiting room when I got the call, and I collapsed on the floor. I was screaming because, like I said, that's how we mourn. Nobody asked, they didn't try to understand. They just called security. And so I ended up in restraints on a 72-hour hold with, I'm in a room with no windows. It was like day 2 before I was on antipsychotics, even though I wasn't hallucinating, and even though I kept telling them, this is just me, this is how I grieve. I wasn't unstable, I was mourning. But, I guess nobody heard that part.
When someone says they're hearing a voice or believing something that doesn't make sense to anyone else, your first instinct should not be panic. Your first instinct should be curiosity. Ask, when did it start? Does it scare you? What does the voice say? Do you feel in control of the experience? Has anything like this happened before? Maybe during trauma, grief, or stress? We don't treat hallucinations by silencing people. We treat them by listening better, by understanding the context, the story, the nervous system beneath the symptom. Not all voices need to be medicated, but every voice, literal or metaphorical, deserves to be heard. Not all voices mean madness. Some voices are grief. Some are memory. Some are a brain still speaking a language of survival. And if we're brave enough to listen, we might help someone translate it into healing. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.